how much money do you think it would take to call yourself rich? How much money do you have to say you're a rich person? $1? Okay.
I don't need no money to be rich.
Okay. Oh, come on, y'all play the game with me. Come on. $1 million? I was kind of thinking $1 million. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
Trillion.
$1 trillion to be rich? Okay.
Bill Gates.
Well, I did some research.
Bill Gates.
I Googled it. And according to a 2025 study, you need $731,492
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
to be in the top 1% of earners. All right, that's the top 1% of earners. 731,492, and that's what they say that it takes to be rich. Now, that I found that interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's so specific. You know, 731,492 to be considered rich. I guess if I'm 731,491, I'm not rich. Also, I really thought it would be much higher than that. You know, just my thinking that to be rich, you had to be a millionaire to be in that. They're calling that what they call the top 1% has that amount.
Worldwide, or in this country?
Okay. You're thinking too much. Okay. just roll with me, okay? But in the studies that I looked at, everybody that had that amount always thought it was supposed to be more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That no one who was rich thought that they were rich. I mean, unless you're really way on up there, most people don't think that they're rich. And you can go, yes, I know that compared to other countries, we're all rich. I get it, but I just thought that was interesting. But what was really interesting was that rich people don't think they're rich. And it always takes just a little bit more. Rich people always think, well, if I just had a little bit more, then I'd be rich, and then I'd be content. Because that's what everybody wants, right? We want contentment. We want to be able to, just pay those bills. And if I just had $731,492 in the bank, I'd be content, right? And yet, we all know people who are very poor, and they are content. And we know that rich people, wealthy, famous, powerful people, so many of them. Think about the movie stars and the politicians who look like they have everything, and then they wound up taking their own lives because they were just absolutely miserable. I think about King David in the Old Testament. That guy's loaded, right? And King David, he had plenty of money. He had a lot of difficulties in his life, but he learned to love life. Think about his son, Solomon, who was even more wealthy than his dad and had fewer problems than his dad. And he wrote in Ecclesiastes, he said, I hate life. So what's up? What's it going to take for a guy to be content? What's it going to take for us to be able to love life? If it's not money and fame and power, which obviously it's not. I mean, you've got to be crazy to think anymore that if I just had a little more money, I'd be content. It just doesn't work that way, does it? I mean, it's obvious. If you have eyes to see, you can see other people that have all these money, they're rarely ever content. They're rarely ever happy. And so what's it going to take for us to, if money and stuff are not going to do it, what is it that's going to do it? Because we just want to be content in this life. We want to enjoy our lives. We want to love lives. Well, turn to 1 Peter. I'm going to tell you this morning what it's going to take to make you content. We're continuing our study in 1 Peter. 1 Peter, he starts off talking about how to be holy, and then he talks about submitting, and we're going to see here that Peter tells us all how to live a happy life. a life that is enjoyable. And he's going to tell us all the one thing that we all have in common, whether we're rich or we're poor. So turn to 1 Peter chapter 3. We're going to concentrate just on verses 8 through 12 this morning. And part of what we're going to read is David actually quoting King David out of Psalm 34. And I find it interesting that Peter starts off this passage by saying, finally, finally. And you know, it sounds like he's wrapping it up. I actually went to a evangelistic service last night, and the guy there preached for a solid hour. And then he said, all right, I'm going to let y'all go. Everybody stand up. And so we all stand up. And he preached for 15 more minutes. Well, I'm like, why you got me standing up here? Anyhow, that looks like what Peter is doing here. It's not. He's not saying, finally, I'm closing the whole letter. He's just closing this aspect of it, this one part of the letter. And he's going to tell us all the secret to enjoying life. Okay? 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 12. Finally, all of you, live in harmony with one another. Be sympathetic. Love as brothers. Be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult, but with blessing. Because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. For whoever would, this is where he's quoting King David, for whoever would love life and see good days must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from deceitful speech. He must turn from evil and do good. He must seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. Stop right there. I'd say verses 8 and 9 are what we're supposed to do. Verse 10 is what we want, and verse 12 is the motivation for getting it right. Let's look at it more closely. Verses 8 and 9 are about having the right attitude. The right attitude. He starts with having the attitude of unity or harmony. You know, there was in one of the songs we sang there, with that last verse was a very good verse to get harmony. I'm not a music guy. Are we singing, you know, when someone's singing up here and singing down here and singing down here, are we singing different notes? Because they're all in harmony. Is it different notes, or is it different, what do you call that? Huh?
Octaves.
Octaves, singing different octaves. So it's not all the same note, but it's, or I don't know if it is or not. It doesn't all sound the same, but it comes out so beautifully. It's all the same it comes together in harmony. And that's exactly what Peter is saying here. That's exactly how it ought to be in a church. We can, it's not all the same ideas, but we all come together and we make all these different sounds, but we all come together and make this one big, beautiful sound. That's the way it should be. And we can all have these different ideas and yet be unified. We're not talking about uniformity where everybody has the same idea. We're talking about unity where we can have different ideas and yet still be together on it. You know, Jesus prayed in John 17 that we would be unified. And it's still one of the biggest things I pray for with this church is for God to give us unity in everything that we do. Paul said in Philippians 1 that we should all stand firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving for the gospel. And that means we ought to all bring our ideas, all of our ideas, we ought to bring them all to the table. But when there's a difference of opinion, we do like Paul said to do in Ephesians 5. He said to submit to each other out of reverence for Christ. Submit to each other. Bring all your ideas and discuss them, see which one's going to work the best, but then submit to each other. That's harmony. That is unity, and it's blessed by God. Hang on. Wait just a second. Because I know some of you are thinking, okay, yeah, unity, submit, yeah, got it. What's next, preacher? Let me ask you a question. Do you believe the Bible? And I ask that question. That's a dumb question to ask in the church right here, right? No, I don't believe the Bible, right? I mean, but do you really, really believe it? Are you convinced? Are you sold on it? Are you absolutely sure that you believe it? And if so, I want you to see something here. I want you to see that when there is unity, when you submit to each other out of when you submit to others for the sake of God, look at what Peter is saying. He's saying also all these other things. You live in harmony, you be sympathetic, you love others, you be compassionate, humble. Then look at verse 9. You seeing it? You got your Bibles out? If you do all those things, then you are called to get a blessing from God. Okay? If you will do those things, you get a blessing from God. I want that. I want a blessing. I don't even know exactly what it is, but if God says He wants me, He's calling me to have it, I want that. Right? And we're going to see more about what that blessing entails in just a minute, but if God has called me to get a blessing, I am all in. I'm going to submit. I'm going to live in harmony. I say all that because I know what I think sometimes in the back of my mind, and probably what you're thinking in the back of your mind. I have this idea, and it's the best idea, and it's the right idea for this church. It really is. I have experience doing this. I know it's the right thing. I've prayed about it, and it's the best idea, and people just need to submit to my idea and be quiet. But let me tell you, if that's what you're thinking, if that's what I'm thinking, it may be the best idea, but if it brings division to the church, it's not right. Amen. There is one thing that trumps unity. You know what that is? Truth. We're not going to back down from truth. We're not going to give it up. That is a fight worth having for truth. But when it comes to the day in, day out decisions of how a church needs to be run or how a family needs to be run, you bring all your ideas and you discuss which one is going to work the best. But here it is. The first one to submit wins. Do you see that? The first one to submit is blessed by God. I would rather be blessed by God than be right. I would rather be blessed by God than everybody say, oh, okay, I guess Todd's got the best idea right here. Finally. And that goes for all the rest of this stuff that Pete's bringing out here. He says, be sympathetic, be blessed. Be loving and be blessed. Be compassionate and humble, be blessed. All of those things go against the grain of us as humans, though, doesn't it? It goes against the grain of what the world is telling us to do. The world says, fight for that. Go for it. That's you. Stick up for yourself. How about this one from verse 9? Look at it. Is there anything harder in this world to do than to not repay evil with evil, but a blessing instead? Oh, good grief, come on, that's so hard. When someone insults you, when they say that you're not very smart, or you're not very pretty, or you have the personality of a damp rag, whatever it is, and what's your response? There's literally books written on the best comebacks, on how to put these people in their place. Yes. He's like, I'm going to get that book later on. But God is saying through Peter here that your response should be to bless that person. Bless that person. I think it was Steve Martin, the comedian, that I heard talk about this. And he was being dead serious at the time. He said he ran into some drunk guy who wanted to fight him for whatever reason. And he didn't want to fight. Steve Martin didn't want to fight. And he knew that would be a problem. But the guy kind of, I don't know, he pushed him, called him some names, whatever. And Steve Martin was just determined he wasn't going to fight this guy. And so the guy's all up in his face. And he said, Steve Martin said, hey, I really like your shoes. And the guy said, Shut up about my shoes. But it threw him off, you know. And Steve Martin said, no, seriously, I really like those shoes. Where did you get those shoes? I'd like to get me a pair just like that. And he said the guy told him where he got the shoes. And then they just walked off. Now, who won that fight? They both did. They both did. And that's exactly what Peter is saying, what God is saying through Peter here, that when you will not retaliate, when you choose to bless someone instead of fight back, that you get a blessing, that you will be blessed by God. Now, verse 10 is the blessing. This is what we want. Verse 8 and 9 tell us the right attitude to have to get the blessing. Verses 10 and 11 spell it out. This is basically, low-key, the secret to life right here. You want to enjoy life right where you are? Do you want to be content right where you are? He's not telling us how to get more money or be more famous. He's telling us how to be content right where we are with what we have. Let's read verses 10 and 11. For whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. They must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. This is that quotation from David in Psalm 34. This is basically what Peter was trying to say. And since Peter knew the Old Testament scriptures, he uses this to back up what he was saying. You want to love life? Well, again, who's going to say, oh, no, I don't want to love life. I'd just rather go through my life hating it until I die. No, we all want to love life. He's not telling us how to make more money or to be more famous. He's saying that we can love the life that we're living, and we do it basically by doing just what Peter was telling us all from the first chapter on, by living a holy life. For nearly 2 chapters, Peter is telling us to live holy, why we should live holy. What's it look like to be holy? To be holy and you are rewarded. And now he's telling us to live holy and be happy. Live holy and be blessed. Live holy and love your life. And then Pete breaks out the big guns here and he quotes King David by saying basically the same thing. Now the only question is, do you really believe it? Okay, let me ask you another question. Let me ask, for those of you who insist on doing it your own way, for those of you who insist that it's okay to talk like the world talks and watch what the world watches and listen to what the world listens to, and your life doesn't look any more holy than the average unholy non-believer, how's that working out for you? Seriously, I mean, how's that working out? Is your life blessed? Would you say that you enjoy your life? Do you have peace? If so, keep going. Go ahead, do it. Right on, brother. But I think if you would be honest, you would say that your life is actually harder than it has to be. And peace is hard to find. Joy. What about your prayer life? Do you feel like God is answering your prayers? Is He even hearing them? Look at verse 12 again. Peter's talking about prayer here when he says that the eyes of the Lord are toward the righteous and His ears attend to their prayers. What a fascinating little verse. When he says the eyes of the Lord, that's a common Old Testament saying that relates to God's special caring watchfulness over His people. Proverbs 5:21 says something similar. It says, for your ways are in full view of the Lord, and He examines all your paths. Now that ought to be very comforting to all of us. That's one of the reasons that we say that we appreciate that God is interested in what we're interested in. You know, how there's no prayer too big or too small to ask of God. That God is examining all of your ways and everywhere we go and everything that we do. The eyes of the Lord are on your ways, all your ways. And when you are right with Him, it says that He attends to your prayers. Now, that doesn't mean that He's going to say yes to all of your prayers, and that's a good thing because so many times we don't know exactly what we should be praying for. But He attends to those prayers. He hears them. He's especially aware and especially attends to those petitions, those crying out, those supplications that we cry out to Him with. That's very comforting to know that He is especially attentive to those prayers. When Peter or David talks about the eyes of the Lord, it always talks about the watchfulness of God. And that's comforting. But then he goes on to talk about the face of the Lord. And how the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. His eyes represent God's all-seeing, all-caring watchfulness and care. But when it talks about God's face, it symbolizes His wrath and His judgment. And Revelation chapter 6, it's talking about the end times and the end of the Great Tribulation, in fact, and how horrible it's going to be for all those that are left behind. And in verse 16 it says, "They called to the mountains and the rocks, 'Fall on us and hide us from the face of Him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lord.'" They don't want God's face to be on them. It's in Revelation. If you go all the way back to Genesis, it says that Adam and Eve walked with God and had fellowship with Him as friends, but then they were disobedient to the one thing God told them not to do. And it was God who cursed the ground, He cursed the woman, He cursed the man, and He drove them out of the garden. His face was against them. Turn over a couple pages from there to chapter 6, and we see that it says how that God saw how great man's wickedness had become, and He was grieved. It says in verse 8 that Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. But it goes on to say that God caused it to rain, and God caused it to flood, and it killed everybody except Noah's family. God's face was against those who did wickedness. Turn a few more pages over. Chapter 18 of Genesis. Abraham found favor in the eyes of the Lord, it says. But God saw the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah. And I won't go into that whole long story about what happened there. Y'all know the thing. In Genesis 19:28, it says that the place that Sodom and Gomorrah used to be, it says the plains smoked as though it burned in a furnace. God's face was against them. As I turn the pages of the Bible, I read about Samson's life and the judgment of God upon him. Saul's life and the judgment of God upon him. David's life, the man after God's own heart, and the judgment of God upon him. Solomon, it says, whom God loved, and the judgment of God upon him. I turn the pages just over and over again, and I see the face of God against Israel. In 2 Kings, it says that they were destroyed by the Assyrians and carried off into captivity. God's face was against them because they had done evil. And for those of you who think that how good it is that God has chilled out from all that Old Testament wrath, 2 Thessalonians 1 says, this will happen when the Lord Jesus is revealed from heaven in blazing fire with His powerful angels. He will punish those who do not know God and do not obey the gospel of our Lord Jesus. They will be punished with everlasting destruction and shut out from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of His might. Peter says that the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. And maybe you're thinking, oh, that's good. Those evil people, they deserve it. You think, you're not evil. I'm not an evil person. I'm here in Christ Fellowship this morning. So God's loving eyes must be on you. But unless you are living holy, as Peter described in the previous chapter, and unless you are living like he describes in these verses, 8 and 9 especially, then God considers that evil. To be not holy is to be evil. Just because you're not as bad as some guy down the street doesn't mean that you're not evil and God's face is against you. Maybe that's why you seem to struggle in this life. like you do. Maybe that's why you say you love life and yet you don't see many good days. Wikipedia describes Marla Maples as an American singer, television personality, model, actress, and presenter. But I think if anybody has ever heard of her, they know her to be Donald Trump's second wife. She was interviewed one time, and she told the interviewer that she believes in the Bible. She says, but you can't always take it literally and be happy. The immortal words of philosopher Marla Maples. The world sees holiness as a barrier to happiness. But in everything that the world tries, there is no lasting happiness. One of the kings of the Roman Empire, a guy by the name of Abdal-Rahman, said this. He wrote, I have now reigned above 50 years in victory or peace, beloved by my subjects, dreaded by my enemies, and respected by my allies. Riches and honors, power and pleasure have waited on my call, nor does any earthly blessing appear to have been wanting to my felicity. In this situation, I have diligently numbered the days of pure and genuine happiness with which have fallen to my lot. They amount to 14. O man, place not thy confidence in this present world. You get that? The guy reigned for 50 years and had everything money and power and fame could buy, and he counts all of his really good days as about 2 weeks and all that time. Quit trying to do it the world's way. Quit trying to be worldly and be cool and fit in. You're not going to fit in if you're a believer. Start trying it God's way. And you and everyone around you will be happier. Live in harmony with one another. Be sympathetic. Love as brothers. Be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. And may God's watchful eye always be upon you. Do you have a relationship with God through His Son Jesus? You can. All you have to do is believe that Jesus, as Jesus said in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father but through me. All you have to do is believe it. Then allow that belief to change your life. Allow God to come in and change you from the inside out. And allow Him and Him only to give you the peace and the joy and the happiness that only He can give. Timmy, will you come up? We've come to our time of invitation. I'd invite you to come up and ask for prayer for anything that you need right now. Whether it's a spiritual issue, financial, physical, whatever's going on, we'd love to pray with you right now.